And then, on top of that, be telling your parents that you're dying is...
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah.
You're going to make me upset here. Like, it's horrible. You shouldn't have to do that.
No.
Well, of course, my parents are amazing about it anyway, so...
Welcome to Ireland Unfiltered. This week's guest is Rory O'Neill, or the Queen of Ireland, Panti Bliss. Panti's show, Riot, is back in Vicar Street from May 1st to the 4th. It's an incredible experience, and it's definitely worth checking out. In keeping with the series, in keeping with Ireland Unfiltered, we got Rory O'Neill in the chair this week, and it was as fascinating and as moving and as hilarious as you would expect from somebody who is one of the most important figures in modern times in Ireland, and I think one of the most insightful. So Rory's coming up now. Before we go to that, don't forget to subscribe to Ireland Unfiltered on all the usual channels, and if you like the show, please give it a review. So here's Rory O'Neill. Rory.
Yes, Dion.
Welcome to Ireland Unfiltered.
Thanks, I guess.
That's great. It's really wonderful to have you here. I want to ask you something. There's a line in your book where you say, most of the things I like most about me are rooted in my differences.
Yes.
Was that something you were always aware of?
No, I wasn't aware of it, but I became aware of it as I got older. And, I mean, I've never understood, the people who want everybody to be exactly the same as them, those kinds of people. I think it's fun that there are weirdos and nuts and kooks and, and even people that I don't like and think their opinions are terrible. I'm still glad that they're in the world, as long as they're not pushing those, forcing other people to live by their rules. As long as that's the case, I'm glad, because it makes the world just more interesting. How boring would it be if everybody was, a 50-year-old fabulous gay? Do you know what I mean? Why would you want people to be exactly like you? But of course I didn't appreciate that when I was younger. I didn't understand that.
Did you want to fit in?
Momentarily, but not hugely. I mean, I don't have an anguished sort of, backstory in that way. But I often think, I'm thrilled that I'm gay. Because I think I feel more comfortable just being slightly off the center, if you know what I mean. And also, I think it makes me more empathetic. Yeah. Because I would worry that if I was straight, I might be a fucking dick.
Right.
I mean, I would fit very comfortably in this world if I was straight. Like, I'm book smart. I'm, not a hunchback. It would, I'm, the world is basically made for someone like me. And I suspect that if I was straight, or I fear that I'd be driving around in BMW being a wanker to people.
Yeah.
And and I think what saved me from that are two things. One is my parents, who are just absolutely lovely, but also just being queer did, because it, certainly much more strongly in the past, but even now too, it there are certain things that aren't for you. You know what I mean? And just it's made my life more interesting or whatever, and a lot of the reasons for that is because I like other people who aren't necessarily,
and you feel drawn to them.
Yeah, well, they're more interesting generally. People who have been are comfortable in the world all the time, I think that they end up being less interesting. Or they're less interesting to me, maybe.
Well, that's the thing you said about empathy there. That was where that would tend to come from. Maybe we should all have more empathy to begin with, but the stuff that we endure or have to go through in our lives is what kind of usually opens us up, isn't it?
Yes, although, of course, I could introduce you easily to loads of gays who are unempathetic assholes. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. But I think it should. And I think part of the reason why I've always liked the weirdos and the nuts and all that is because I felt a bit of a weirdo too.
Yeah.
And I just, my life experience has been that the weirdos and the nuts are the good people in the end. You know, there's a movie probably in that ends up with the witches being the nice people. Whatever. Yeah. But yeah.
Talk to me about your parents, because you grew up in Mayo, in Ballinrobe.
Yeah.
Your mother lived in England
till she was like 12.
12, and why was she living in England?
Both Irish parents, and her dad was a vet.
Okay.
And Britain had a number of foot and mouth outbreaks,
right?
And they needed vets, and so he took the family to England, Cheshire.
Right.
And he was a vet there. My mother was born there. And then the bloody Egypt went and died and left his wife and Irish wife with 5 kids as a single mother in the 1950s in England.
Yeah.
So she took them back to Dublin.
Right.
And she worked for the gas company for the rest of her life and raised 5 kids on her own, which wasn't easy then.
Right.
And she was determined that they would all be educated.
Yeah.
So my mother, as the eldest, but she was a girl, so she went to work, and the eldest boy was sent off to become a priest. So that's him sorted, like at 12 or something. Yeah. And the next boy was the one that was going to be the professional. Yeah. So everybody, the focus was on getting him into university, and he became a vet.
Right.
And the youngest was another girl, and she was beautiful and has a sexy, sultry voice, and she became an air steward at the time when that was very glamorous, and then married a rich American ex-Navy officer lawyer who was 25 years older than her. Sorted. But it did mean that my mother was the one who didn't get to go to university. You know, all that stuff. And actually my dad met my mother when he came to take the glamorous one out on a date. Okay. And he ended up falling for my mother. And my mother should have been the one to go to university.
Yeah, but she wasn't.
She's really smart and all that stuff. But that just wasn't an option. And so she became the vet's wife. And but she's a real doer, so she was always doing things.
And did she pass on that, like, idea of education to you? Like, was that something, and did she feel that she'd missed out on something?
I think that she would have loved to go to university and done other things, but at the time it just wasn't what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But like I said, so she was like Conic Secretary of the Community Games.
Right. Yeah,
our kid's life was driving around everywhere with flags and, hurdles, whatever, and going to Roscommon, for whatever. And then she was credit union. She's one of those. Right. Pillar of the local community, flat shoes, tweed skirt.
Okay.
But it was always assumed in our house that everybody would get educated and go to school, but not in a super restrictive way. So they were happy enough for me to go to our college. I have another brother who's never liked school and all that, and he was into horses and all that, and he was able to do what he wanted. But the importance of education was clear.
But you say tweed skirt and flat shoes and that, but was there a slightly bohemian element to the household?
There wasn't.
Was there
but they appreciate. So neither of my parents would describe themselves as artistic.
Okay.
And my oldest brother, who's also a flaming homosexual, and he has an art gallery and was into all that stuff from early. And I think my parents enjoyed that they had these kids who were artistic. And they've never. It wasn't their thing, although I think they've grown into it over the years with deals. They had to. So my parents have always been very open and accepting, but they are full-on traditional Irish Catholic parents in other ways. They're not. You think 2 gays and a drag queen, you were probably imagining, whatever, floating around hippies. No, not at all.
There was just a line in the book, in your book, where you say it was you lived in a modern architect designed, that was always important.
Yeah, my dad, the professionals,
right.
appreciate other professionals, because he was one of the town's 5 professionals. Every town, it's the banker,
right.
The doctor, the vet, the bank manager, and the priest. We were part of that.
Right, community.
Plus 4 of a triumvirate, whatever that is.
The quartet.
So, yes. And so, yes, my dad was always very proud of the fact that the house wasn't one of the ones that at the time people just took plans off of, you could buy these,
Yeah.
10 classic plans or something, whatever. And no, an actual architect designed the house.
Right.
And my dad was always very proud of that.
But it was a Catholic. You went to mass. You went to
The lot. Sure, my mother. Well, you see, I said my mother would have liked to go to university. I think really what she would have liked is to go to study theology, and if there'd been women priests who could be married, I think she would have done it.
Right.
She's always been, she's always reading. Both my parents have stacks of books by their bedside table, and my mother's would always include something to do with theology or whatever. Minister of the Eucharist, cleans the church, does the readings. Since we all went up and went off, and my dad retired, they're not as mobile as they were, but they would go to mass every day if they could. They're proper, or they were proper Catholics.
And how did you take to that?
I didn't. I've never been one for organized things, and since I was as young as I can remember, I never believed any of the religious stuff.
Did you not?
Never. And I was an altar boy the lot. I did all this stuff because it was what you did, but I never. No.
And did it scare you or anything? Because I used to not believe it, but I used to be sort of petrified into wanting to believe it, because they talk about hell and they talk about sin and where it would happen.
You wanted to believe it?
Well, only because I thought it was a way of saving. I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't like the idea of eternal.
So you believed some parts of it?
Well, I believe that. Yeah, I suppose I believe the bits that scared me, which I think that would be kind of
like common. I don't ever remember believing any of it really. I mean, I'm not saying that I was, a dyed in the wool atheist with no doubts ever, but I always thought, nah.
I thought my dad was going to go to hell. That's what I thought. And I remember being in church at mass and hearing things and going, I've got to get him, because he never went to mass. I was like, I've got to get him to mass.
You see, I would love to have had a parent who go to mass. Like, I just always thought this is bullshit.
Right.
And so I hated going to mass with a passion. I hated the bits in school we had to do things to do with that or remember things. I started mitching off mass this first time I understood that was a possibility in life. And I've always, people like my older brother, for example, he's not Catholic, but he will say himself honestly that occasionally he likes to go into a church and sit and think, because it's the smells and the thing, right? And I'm like, no, the smell of the church and all that just makes me want to run away screaming. I never liked it for a second. It was the most boring thing in the world. And
was it boring or oppressive?
Mostly just boring. That's what I think of it. Just boring and uncomfortable. Why are even the pews even? They're so bloody uncomfortable and your knees get sore and everything. Like, I just hated every moment of it. And I always, even when I was an altar boy and all that, the priest always had that sort of chalky smell, even though he wasn't a teacher, but he had that thing, and I just hated all of it. And I went to Mercy Nuns, Christian Brothers, and Franciscans. I mean, I had the full cast of Star Wars, and I hated it all. I never ever felt any attraction to it. And when I read then, people who that they have a different experience, I'm just like, what is wrong with you? I don't get it. And so I've never, of course, did I think, God, maybe there is a hell and I'm going to go to it,
right?
But it didn't bother me enough to want to believe. It just seems such bullshit to me. I think from as early as I can remember, this is what I always thought, and I still think it. If God is there and religion is correct, then every person in their religion must think my religion is the right one. I'm closer to God because and even my mother will sort of say, oh, anybody can go to heaven, and I say, oh, so it actually doesn't matter which religion you're in, so then why do you care? Like, you can't all be right, and there's 7.7 billion people on the planet, so if your tiny Christian sect in wherever is correct, everybody else is wrong, and you're the chosen special people, and God has chosen you guys as the only ones who have the right one. What an arrogant fucking way to think that I'm so special that only me in our group, has God, and everybody else is accident of birth. Though that poor kid who was born in, Hindu India, he's never going to have a chance to be in the correct one. Like, it just seems so bullshit. How anybody honestly thinking can sit down and believe that, I just have never understood. Now, I understand that most people do believe in a religion, and my own family do too. So I don't hate them. There'll be people who say, "Oh, you hate." No, I just think it's really odd that normal, sentient human adults can buy any of that.
I know.
But the world is odd, and my friends are odd, my family are odd, everybody's odd. I'm odd, so I don't hate you for it. I just think it's weird that you think that.
Yeah, but it's superstition as well, isn't it?
Yes. And here's the truth. I am the person who, since I was a kid, defiantly walks under a ladder.
Okay.
Even now, as an adult on the street. Sometimes I'll think of it walking, down O'Connell Street, and I purposely start stepping on cracks.
Right.
Because I don't want to be a superstitious person. I'm standing backstage waiting to go on, and I'm always alone usually, because it's usually one-woman shows. And as I'm waiting for the safety announcement or whatever, I'll walk in a circle or I'll touch something, and then the show goes well, and the next night I feel this compulsion starting to walk in the same circle or touch the thing, because then I get angry with myself.
Do you?
And I walk opposite the circle defiantly, and I don't touch that wall. And I just don't want to be superstitious.
And you don't want any of it to infect.
No,
anything.
and so I try my best never to.
Right.
And I have walked under a billion ladders, and I'm fine.
Okay.
So
that's good to know. Yeah, that's an important message to get out there. You can walk under ladders; things will be okay.
I do think one day, somebody will drop a paint pot on me or something, and I'll like, and they'll be like,
"Yeah, well, that teaches them," and then he'll find God.
Maybe that angel with broken wings will come up to you. You stepped on that crack.
But so were you rebellious?
Yes and no. In those kind of ways, I was, but I was also a well brought up kid, so I did what I was mostly supposed to. But I do have a rebellious streak. I don't like authority. That's true. Yeah. And I, smoked behind this bike shed. All that stuff. I don't like authority, and I like to be able to do my way. So if that's a rebellious streak, yes. But I wasn't a bad kid.
Yeah. And you wanted, there's a lovely line in the book when you actually come out to your mother, and she says this thing about you and your brother Lorcan. She says, you and Lorcan always seem like two exotic birds that had just landed down on top of us. Yeah. Like, that's really, it's so moving.
It's so funny because my friends constantly reference that, because of course gays, we tell each other our stories, and for years they joke and laugh about that, and everybody calls my mother Poor Finn.
But to have had put up with
yes,
the two.
Well, one time another person from the town wrote an angry letter to me, and in it, and actually my mother has two gays, and in it they said, when the other women of the town look at your mother, they think Poor Finn. And so, like, the whole family now call her Poor Finn. Yeah, it's funny.
And somebody wrote that from somebody.
Yes, I had done something. Anyway, yeah, he was right to be angry with me because I did a stupid thing, but he misinterpreted it, and he over whatever. But it doesn't, it's long, and it's not even worth going into. But I can't break the privacy of that person's situation. But yeah, no, it's just funny.
But getting out at that stage was an important thing for you. Was there a lure that, like, there must be an outside world that is more glamorous, more exciting?
I'm glad now that I come from a small Irish town. In the 1970s, really idyllic place to grow up, and you could stay out all day, and you weren't going to get run over by a car, and animals and trees and all that stuff. Great place to be a kid. But yes, of course, when I was a teenager, and the kind of things I was interested in, and slowly understanding that I was gay and all that stuff, I wanted to be, I was reading Face magazine and thinking, why aren't I there? So all of that, and I only came to appreciate Ireland later in life, let alone Ballinrobe or whatever. Now, I'm not going to be going back to I'm not that person.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of gays do that. They end up buying a house back in the small. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But I totally appreciate it now in a way that I didn't when I was a kid. I wanted to run as far away as possible.
And did you feel the same about, you came back to Ireland though, when you left?
I did, but I wasn't planning to. I came back in the 90s, 95, and I thought I was just sort of visiting for a while.
Yeah.
I had a vague idea I was going to go to Paris, and but 1995, Dublin actually was, for the first time, actually was fun and interesting for somebody like me. It was really changing. People were coming to live here for the first time ever. They were building the Lewis. It was just like you could see the changes happening, and they just changed the laws a little, so you get a beer in a nightclub, and it just felt like, for the first time to me anyway, it was actually felt like, oh, there are actual possibilities here and more exciting or whatever. And of course, I was also HIV positive, and at the time, that was, you're dying, right. and I just thought, well, I couldn't envisage at that time how I would survive. I know we were all in the EU, and I could get treatment in other places too, but now that's fine. Yeah, I can get me one pill a day from the NHS or something. But at that time, I thought, oh, I have to be here
to be around your
parents. Well, to get the treatments and clinic and all that. I thought I was dying, and well, I didn't think it. I was told. You were told, yeah. All that stuff just seemed impossible to. At the time, it seemed inconceivable you could deal with all that in some foreign country.
But also, it must have seemed, because when I read that, those chapters in your book, or that story in your book, and it I've lost, my parents have had illness, have died from the illnesses they were told they had, and it's the reverse. It's not. It's as you've said, the natural order is subverted when you have to tell your parents. Yes, that you're going to die. Yeah. But still, I remember my father calling me to tell us that our mother was going to die, and the loneliness of that moment. And that's what struck me reading the book as well, like that sense of loneliness. You're walking down the street, looking at the people going about their business.
You're healthy and fine, and worrying about stupid things.
Running for a bus.
I was really pissed off with everybody for a moment.
But did you feel lonely?
Not lonely, because, well, when I was diagnosed, I was living with one of my oldest friends and his boyfriend at the time, and they were gays at the same time, so they understood what it meant entirely. We used to be going to AIDS funerals and all that stuff, so they were very. I didn't have to explain anything to them. They got it. Yeah. And also, they weren't afraid of me because they knew enough to know not to worry about those kind of stuff. So I was lucky in that sense. And, I have this character trait that in sometimes is a bad character trait, but in sometimes it's a life-saving one. And it is that I have an ability not to worry about things, and I can just, I'm closing that off. Right. I'm just going to get on. And so people always think that you get a diagnosis like that, and your life must have ended. And they always want to hear something important from you. They think that you've learned something because you must learn something, right? And no, I didn't. All because, well, you've read the book, and I think I say in the book that the weird thing is that the ordinary banalities of life continue. Yeah. So you may have just been told you're dying, and you may have to eat all this pills and potions and hope for the best, but you still run out of toilet roll. Yeah. You still have to go to fucking Tesco. And that actually, in a weird way, just keeps you going. Yeah. And I have just this ability to think, okay, well, I've acknowledged that, and I'm gonna lock it away because there's no point. It's not gonna help me to worry about it. And in that kind of situation, it's a fucking great gift.
And where did that come from? I'd love to get that gift.
Yeah, but it has drawbacks, because things like I've never met a deadline in my life
Right, okay.
because I won't worry about that. And then until, oh, fuck, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it does have its drawbacks. I'm unprepared for everything. But in those times, it's a life-saving thing. Because there was no point in worrying about it. So, and also, perhaps I'm deluded, but there's part of me that always has thought about everything. That'll work out.
Right.
And everyone thought I was lunatic to think that about that stuff at the time, because people were dropping like flies all around me, but there was some part of me that wouldn't believe that this was going to kill me. It was like some part of me that it'll work out, and it fucking did.
It's extraordinary that, because I know probably like that I like younger people won't be as aware of the horror and the fear that was around.
Well, it's amazing how time goes and people aren't conscious of things anymore. God, I think I jokingly made some reference to like Johnny Logan or something recently, and this person was looked at me entirely and I was like, how can you not know that? And it's and AIDS is the same. They're just like, what? Oh, something that old people used to talk about. Whereas, well, you're at the right age. It was such a thing, and people were terrified of you. They all thought they were going to get out of your toilet seat, or in one of my live shows, I do this stupid joke where I mentioned it out suddenly, and I have a glass of water in my hand, and I always then offer the person in the front row a drink. And it's amazing the reactions to that. There are the people who are horrified that you're making any sort of AIDS joke, and I decided very consciously earlier on to make jokes about it. Because if you can't laugh at it, it's one sort of or something. But also, there's the people then who you can see that for a moment, they actually are hesitant to touch your glass. Even though their brain is telling them, but it's fine, ain't fine, whatever. And then it also has odd effects on other people, because I once did that stupid joke, and then I continue on. Then I say, it's only for a split second, and then I say, oh, I'm kidding, whatever. And I continue on, and about 10 minutes later, this man just walks up the center aisle of the theatre and stands in front of the stage looking at me. Where was I? In Brisbane in Australia. And I was like looking at him, because, yes, you all right? Yeah. And he's I can't remember exact words he said, but he had come up to take the glass of water to prove to these people that,
Right.
Like it was just mortifying, the whole thing, I can't even remember how I dealt with it exactly. And then he went off to the bar and he didn't even come back into the show.
And what was he was trying to prove that it was...
He was trying to say, yes, look,
right.
I'll drink from the AIDS Queen's glass of water to show you that I'm,
Right, It
was just odd. I don't know what was going on in his head, and it was 10 minutes after the silly joke. It's just, I guess, to people of a certain age, it's still, it's such a big word, isn't it?
It is, and I remember, there was, I remember when, Princess Diana would visit, that was, huge news.
Huge thing that she touched somebody with HIV.
Or hugged an AIDS, someone with, it was...
Yeah, and you remember there was the ads on the TV with the tombstones falling over, and and John Hurt doing the voiceover of it. And it says, I actually looked it up recently for something else, and I've forgotten, of course, I don't even mind. But the script nowadays, hearing it now, it's so weird. It's basically saying, run screaming. That's what it basically says. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, and younger gays, they just, it's like some sort of weird Stephen King short stories.
Right, you know? But when you went to tell your parents, it was very real.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. That was one of the worst moments of my life, yeah.
You had to tell them that you were...
in some ways, it is very reminiscent of coming out as gay or whatever. But I've never felt any guilt about being gay.
Right.
Like, I didn't ask to have blue eyes. It has nothing to do with me, in a way. I didn't like telling my parents because I thought it was going to upset them or whatever. But I didn't feel guilty. I didn't do anything to be gay or whatever. Whereas the HIV thing is different. You are loaded with all this guilt that people have decided, although I think it's always hilarious that only HIV is a moral
Yeah.
virus. Who only whereas yellow fever, people are unlucky or whatever. So there's all that you can't help it. Not certainly at the time I've been sort of infected with all of that shaming about it.
So that you did feel that about
I did, of course, because people were constantly telling you, people didn't want to give you sympathy.
Yeah.
Because you're a dirty pervert, and this is just God telling you, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there's all that. Also, nobody likes to talk to their parents with anything that's even remotely connected to icky sex stuff. It's just weird. And then on top of that, be telling your parents that you're dying is like, you're going to make me upset here. Like, it's horrible. You shouldn't have to do that.
No.
Of course, my parents are amazing about it anyway, so.
But that makes it more tough in some ways, doesn't it? Like, if you...
Yeah, kind of, like, but, I hated that. And also because you're hurting them.
Yeah.
You're bringing this horrible thing to them, and they shouldn't have to hear that.
Yeah. But, there is, as you said, it's an incredible story in that sense, because now you take a tablet every morning.
Yeah, it's like the differences are remarkable and also because, like, if you're 20, you probably think 1995 is generations ago. To me, it was last week. I mean, I don't feel particularly any older than now. And back then, the doctor said you're dying.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you have 5 years. 3 of those are going to be horrible and painful and gross and alone and people afraid to touch you. And, and everybody will be, nobody will want to give you any sympathy because you're a dirty pervert. And here's, by the way, is 38 tablets, and you need to have a big plastic box like your granny had, and you need to take these in the morning, and this 3 hours apart, and these ones 2 hours apart, and this whatever, and this one's going to make you vomit, and this one will do this, and this one has to be on no food, this has to be with food. Like, it was a full-time job. And to go from that to now, when I take a pill in the morning at breakfast, nothing.
That's it.
And you're, it makes you not infectious and all the stuff. Like, I'm a normal person because of that pill. And, I do some work with this drug company that makes a lot of HIV drugs. And I was in Australia with them recently doing these talk things. And it was all to do with their bringing out a new HIV treatment drug. And they're very casually saying that this is the last one they're ever developing because they don't believe it can get any better. This is as good as it get. And so I guess from now on, if they do anything in the HIV field, it's their vaccines and cure. Is the thing. But this is as good as the treatment. They're at the end of the road. And so it's a 1 pill a day thing. Yeah. Just whatever they think is slightly better than the other one.
Yeah, I know.
That is just incredible. For a disease where people were dropping like flies. They had no idea what it was. They thought it was never going to be, even manageable because it's a tricky little bastard. To go from that to this is remarkable. And actually, Fiona Mulcahy is the consultant in St. James's. And she has been a consultant. She was the youngest consultant ever in this country because nobody wanted to touch that. It wasn't exactly, they weren't queuing up to treat the AIDS victims, And so she kind of fell into it, and she has been treating the people since 1980, whatever. She's approaching her retirement. Like, I was saying to her, like, you're probably not allowed to think this out loud, but my God, how exciting that career was for you. Because what other area of medicine has had that journey in one person's career? Yeah. To going from dealing every day with dead people and dying people and having to tell them all of that to it almost being boring and dull at the clinic now.
So the initial conversation having altered so fundamentally from the one you had.
To basically being somebody whose all of her patients died horribly, some of them faster than others, but they all died. To going to a situation now where if someone dies, they're all devastated because, you know, it didn't have to be, you know, they didn't take their medications or whatever. I don't know, but it's night and day.
It's one of those things, you know, when people say that we're actually living in a kind of, this is a wonderful time to be living despite everything that seems to be terrible about it. It's one of, when you put something like that in that context, you kind of get that too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is like there are great things happening.
Loads of them. And you know what? I think every country's probably kind of the same, but you know, you're in Ireland and people are living their lives and they're surrounded by Ireland and they all have sudden, you know, convince ourselves that we're the worst at everything. We have the worst housing crisis. Our politicians are all corrupt. This is bad. That is bad. That is bad. And sometimes I just want to shake them and say, go to another country for a while because we're actually really lucky. Most places are much worse off. And they're, you know, we think, you know, people are annoyed at Leo because they think he might have gotten a free meal out of Kylie Minogue. I'm like, if that is the level of corruption you're worried about, you know, in other countries, we're really lucky here. And sometimes you need to step back to notice it. And I feel the same way about things.
Do you think Leo is under pressure in a different way as a gay Taoiseach?
He totally is, from the other gays. Right. The gays are really hard on him. Yeah. Harder than they are on previous Taoiseachs. Okay. And I think it's because they want him to be the perfect fucking gay Taoiseach because it's a milestone of some sort. Yeah. And so anything he does that they don't think is perfect is a huge, you know, like my Facebook is full of it. Right. And and I actually sometimes just feel, you know, you can agree or disagree with his policies. That's all fine, but you're really aggressively focused on this in a way that you weren't with every other teacher. Back off, bitch.
But what about, say, then the general reaction to something like the letter to Kylie?
Now that was just nonsense. Yeah. If Enda Kenny had written a letter to fucking Pink Floyd across the road and gone to the concert.
He played air guitar at Bruce Springsteen, didn't he?
Exactly. And did anybody complain about that? Did anybody worry if he'd gotten a free meal out of Bruce Springsteen or laugh about it or whatever? No, but it's because he's a gay and it was Kylie Minogue. And I'm sorry, that's what it was. And when you really think about it, it was just bullshit homophobia. I'm sorry, and I know I shouldn't be. And I'm not getting, you know, upset about it. I'm not wandering around hating everybody for it. Yeah. I'm just saying, think about it. It's just nonsense. Yeah. It is. If, you know, that is exercising you, you need to get out of the house.
Have you found it
Oh, by the way, can I also just say, if he had not written that letter to Kylie Minogue, I would, who is that weirdo? Because what gay man has Kylie Minogue across the road from your office? You have this job and one of the perks is possibly getting to meet Kylie Minogue. If you don't take that fucking perk,
out.
Get out. Yeah, like you're not gay. Give me back that card. You know, like, yeah. That
right, okay.
I would have complained about. Yeah. He's some sort of robot.
Have you found it strange becoming a sort of a part of the, like, would you consider yourself respectable now?
Oh my God, do I think it's strange? It's bizarre. Yeah. The thing I've worried about most since being told I was dying is being mainstream and respectable. And that's compounded by stuff like, I know you're a heterosexual man, but there's a thing called RuPaul's Drag Race, which has made drag more popular than it's ever been, with like teenage girls and people who are not supposed to be our audience. Right. Like, I did this thing called Seminar in the RDS a while ago, and it's for young people and all that. And I'm, walking into the RDS in full drag, trying to find out where I'm meant to be, sort of vibe. And groups of teenage girls are screaming and coming up to compliment me on my hip padding. And I'm like, you're not even meant to know about hip padding. It's a weird thing that, so I have my own particular weirdness situation of ending up mainstreamed. And drag itself, at the same time, is become more mainstream than it ever has. And that is weird and awkward, and I don't like it.
But talk to me about the process of that in some ways, because I wonder how much it had to do with your speech as Panti that night at the Abbey, and
well, the leaving aside the general mainstreaming and pop culture of drag,
right? Okay,
because that's its own thing. In my own particular case, all of that stuff, it has everything to do with the speech in the Abbey.
But there's a line in the film where Martha Halloran says, "You spoke the truth above the heads of the political classes," and it struck me that was kind of nailed it, because up until then, discourse had taken place in a certain way, and
the usual bullshit way between lawyers and nonsense, and what often happens to people, like me. Now I have the advantages that I'm educated, I have the right accent, I'm a fella, I'm whatever. So I can talk to a politician or a doctor like this. But before people knew me, and I was just the drag queen, they had me in a totally other box. And to people like that they thought I was, we get talked over. So you get talked about and talked over, and people, I spent my life telling people, no, you don't know what's best for me.
Yeah.
And that was just one of those situations. And I was just the bloody drag queen. And then the Abbey asked me to do this thing, and I could talk about anything I wanted. Yeah. And I was really busy and up to me eyes and in the middle of this shitstorm at the time, and I said, well, and I wanted to say yes because the Abbey had been good to me anyway, but I also thought, actually, no, I'm going to do that fucking thing because there won't be any lawyers there. Yeah. There won't be any TV producers telling me what I can and can't say and freaking out and whatever. And the people who are there aren't just the people who go to gay bars. They're the establishment. And I said, I'm going to tell them what I fucking think, because nobody else would let me talk. At that time, none of the newspapers could get an article printed past their lawyers, RTE, whatever. I was just being talked about all the time, and there was an awful lot of noise, and nobody asked me what I fucking thought about it. So I thought, well, now I did not think that anybody apart from the people who were in the theatre would ever hear that speech. It was for my own benefit, my own just fuck them. So all the other stuff was not planned, or how could I possibly? But it was enough for me at the time to think, I'm going to tell those middle class Irish Times readers in the Irish Times exactly what I fucking think. And the rest I never.
But the rest is how everything demonstrates how everything changed, doesn't it?
Yes. There's an awful lot of luck involved or whatever, and also, sometimes you make your own luck too. Sometimes I think, and I can see that all the things that I've been doing with my life had actually been training me to be able to do the exact thing I needed to be able to do at that moment.
What do you mean by that?
I don't mean training in the sense of...
No, I know that, but what do you mean?
But at that moment, what I needed to get myself out of trouble and to make all the other stuff actually happen in a way was to be able to articulate in a way that people heard exactly what I felt, and also to know enough about things like the stage and all that to know that I need to do it as Panti. I need to, write this thing, and I need to be, I had the skills I needed at that moment, because I'd spent all these years on stages and beer crates and nightclubs and whatever, and theatre shows, and telling people about my life and whatever. Even down to the small things like, the first 2 minutes of that speech is just nonsense, because I know most of these people in this audience are going to be like, oh my God, is that a man or a woman? Is that a wig? And it takes them a few moments to get past all of that before you can say anything that they'll hear. Right. The first few minutes, they're not listening to anything. They're just, looking at your boobs. And
so it's like that thing almost, when they say it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become
an overnight sensation.
Or like as good at something. And like you had done those hours.
All the work, all the preparatory work had already been done, and I didn't realize that. And I just, but all the things that I had learned in my, life up to then, from the sort of stagecraft side of things to just life experience and the gay stuff and all that stuff, just look what happened. I was the right person for it to happen to, because I had the necessary skills, it turns out, by accident, to make use of that situation. And if it had happened to me 15 years earlier,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
God
yeah.
only knows I'd be, you know, in Cambodia hiding
Yeah,
or something,
yeah.
you know. Yeah.
And did that ability you have to not to switch off about worry, did that come into its own there?
It did, because I never really worried about the consequences. I was just pissed off about it. Yeah.
Talk to me about Panti then. You have a line again where you say that it's a drag queen's job always to look as if she's having fun. Whether she is or not.
Yeah, well, it's like any. Well, it's, you know, I guess, you know, almost any job, you're on when you're on, and it doesn't matter, you know, what you're doing, what's going on in your back life. When your client comes in and you're a lawyer, you need to be a lawyer, or whatever. And a drag queen's job, well, there's a number of them, but one of them is to be the life and soul of the fucking party.
And is that hard for you sometimes?
Not anymore, because I don't do that aspect of the job anymore.
Right.
But I spent, you know, long years in nightclubs.
Yeah.
And those, yes, your job is to be fun. And when you're 22, it's the perfect job.
Yeah.
What 22-year-old doesn't want to dress up and get drunk? I mean, that is literally the job. Now, as you get older, it's not fun anymore. It's work.
Yeah.
And so I, you know, made a conscious decision to, you know, to move out of the club stuff and get into other stuff. Just because I was getting older. So yeah, but that is one of the jobs, and certainly as a young drag queen, that is the job.
Right.
Be fun.
Yeah. Talk to me about Riot then.
My God, that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. All that other stuff, that was just nonsense.
Standing off all this is a line from the show. What do you want to know about it?
Everything.
Everybody else says explain right. I don't know how to. Basically, it's a show. It's a kind of about Ireland. It is wildly noisy. It's like being at a gig. It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. It's colourful and bright and noisy. You can tell your mother, I was at the theatre last night, and she'll think, my child is a very good intellectual, appreciates culture, and you're not lying to her. But you can also tell your mates, I was at this mad gig last night, and you're not lying to them either. It looks like a variety show, because every 5 minutes it's different, and there are lords of strut being, you know, nutty, crazy comedy acrobats, and there are aerialist guys, ex-GAA football players stripping with Tato, but there's also, it feels like gigs, it's all live singing and music, and there's crazy dancing and nuttery and drag queen, but there's also moments where it suddenly becomes really real, and it's kind of powerful and moving at times. It's a journey. It's sort of like normally it's hard to sell this show in that way because it's hard to describe. Yeah, it's like if a circus fucked a theater and then they took acid and went to a nightclub.
Okay, that's a good sell.
Yeah,
I think that pulls everyone in.
Well, yesterday I was doing some of these stuff with one of the women in the show, and she said it's like a house party, a late after party, and she's right, because it's like it all feels a bit weirdly surreal. There's people doing something really nutty over there. You're like, ah! One moment, and then having a deep and meaningful in the bathroom. It does a bit like that. It has a circus quality, and at the very beginning, I'm tell the audience, go to the bar, because it's not meant to be a.
Right.
So
it's not meant to be. You're not meant to sit there and switch off your phones.
No, you're meant to be screaming and whatever. And if you feel like getting a drink, get a drink.
Okay, that's good.
And there's no audience participation. That people are all so worried about that. But there is a moment where anybody who wants can join in something. Yeah. And if you do go to the show, do it if you have the opportunity, because it's super fun. But that super fun thing is, beating the crap out of somebody with the pool noodle. Okay. It is whatever. But the show actually, you think this is just nutty fun, and this thing is completely unrelated to the thing that was 5 minutes ago, but that's only you think. And it turns out in the end we are secretly making you think about stuff. And at the end, you should hopefully feel like you can change the world.
Right.
And normally when I'm selling these kind of things, you're doing these things and I'm just shift tickets, I feel a bit guilty telling everybody to buy a ticket because I know that some people will like it and some people won't. And poor old Auntie Maura from Navan is not going to like this show and she might go to it now. But I never feel that about the show because everybody fucking loves it because it's really good fun. And
where have you been with it?
It started in Dublin in the Fringe Festival a couple of years ago in the Spiegel old tent. We've been Canada, New York, Melbourne, Sydney. It's a big show, so it's very expensive to tour it. There's like a lot of people and stuff going on. So it's expensive, but basically they hook in with like festivals and this kind of thing. That's how they can afford to occasionally take us off somewhere exotic. And
it's now in Dublin from the 1st of May?
May 1st to 4th. So we've done Vicar Street before with it. And this is, I think, kind of a final hurrah for Dublin. I don't think it's ever going to come back here again. And May 1st to 4th in Vicar Street, 4 nights but 6 shows. And yeah, it's gas. And like we've done hundreds of times, and I'm not bullshitting you. I still laugh every time at some of the stupid things in it. When a Lords of Struck gets stuck in a ring and his big hairy arse is jumping around or whatever. Yeah, it's just hilarious. Yeah.
You said that people could leave it thinking they can change the world. Did you feel that over the last few years in Ireland, or at least that you changed Ireland?
Yeah. I mean, I think Irish young people probably think, oh, it's changing the world is totally easy, because they kind of feel they did, and they did, actually. But if you're a little bit older, that came as a real shock because we were used to doing all the work and then nothing changing, all the referendums and all that sort of stuff. It is possible. The world does change all the bloody time. And that's actually what gives me hope about this sort of nonsense era we're in with the Trumpery and all that stuff. Some people, pessimists, think it's all going to hell, but sometimes there's a other reaction back against stuff, and there is that part of me that no matter what Twitter tells me, I think most people are decent. It's only.
And you think that's the reflected not only most importantly in the results of the 2 referendums, but the way those referendums were achieved by people telling their stories.
Yes.
And we had Emily Pine as a guest on this, and she made the point that, it's people telling their stories, which was, took a great leap of faith in some senses, but also how people then responded to those stories, which would tally with what you're saying, that most people are generous, are kind and have empathy.
They are. And you see those really angry people on Twitter or whatever, and and you just think, oh my God. And yet my experience has shown me that even those people, if you sat beside them on the bus to go all the way, they're not that person that they are on Twitter. I have a good friend, Buzz O'Neill. You might know him. He's a great football guy and all that stuff. And I'm always saying to Buzz, oh my God, Buzz, on Facebook, you're a fucking prick. He's so aggressive and everything. I was like, and so sometimes when I read these things, I'm like, well, Buzz is actually a nice guy, but I would think online that he's a dick.
I know a couple of people like that. I'm always telling them, no, this guy is a really nice guy.
So that, I mean, some of the things, obviously there are just assholes out there too, but I don't necessarily believe it's all going to shit.
There's
you can have a backlash to a backlash.
And do you think that is there a sort of is it that, like, when people say, like, the Panti Bar was attacked last year?
Well, that's a very good example. So a brick gets thrown through the wall, through the window. It has something horrible written on it, and then the fucking idiot, was caught by our security men 20 minutes later, and with the cops and all, and then we were just like, oh, should we even press charges? He's like a kid. he's like a messed up kid who got a brick and wrapped a piece of, gaffer tape around it. And like, if you saw him, he's just a skinny kid with a bicycle. Like, what had seemed scary just now, saying, oh God.
Well, that's it. When you meet, it's a bit like Twitter in some ways. Like everybody has the same voice on Twitter, which was originally a good thing. I don't know, it's become less of a good thing. But when you see them in real life, as you say, you get the nuance. You also get to see them if they're they're not scary, they're not terrifying.
Although occasionally, because there's this well-known anti-gay, anti-everything troll on Twitter, and this fabulous dyke came to me once, and she's always a scheme, and she wanted to track her down, and she wanted to go to this troll's find this troll, and she was like drunk and wanted me to get on board this, and then we were going to go with a camera and go and knock on her door. And I was like, no, you'll knock on the door and some little old lady who's just lonely and sad, will come out and you'll feel really bad about it. And then the troll was exposed. Oh my God, no! Like she's like a educated young horrible witch, I regret not going and knocking on her door. So some of them are just evil.
And do you think some of them, like some of that is, sort of, as you say, a backlash against backlash? Are they becoming more vocal because the tide has turned against that point of view?
They're emboldened because they used to think they were alone, and the internet, in many good ways, has brought lonely people together, but in many bad ways, it has brought lonely, sad people together. All those people who would be at home jerking off in their basements for 20 years ago are now circle jerking together and getting angry about stuff. And
they do have, like we saw this event recently that was cancelled, the drag story time event for kids, and it was cancelled because of extremely violent homophobic abuse.
Yes, and I read some of that. I went down that Twitter hole. Yeah, it's just absolutely bizarre. People think because somebody's a drag queen or because someone has once performed at an event which wasn't for kids, just a normal sort of club nuttery, I think that somehow they are deranged perverts who are going to be doing the exact same show for children in a library. Like, it's so bizarre. People can do two things, at this, in their lives. It's absolute nuttery. The sad thing about that is not that, because by the way, I don't believe any of it. Those people know that that's fake outrage. They are faking that outrage. Right. They can't be that much of shut-ins in their lives that they can't appreciate that people can do one thing one night and then do something for kids the next. So it's fake, that outrage. So they're just cynical assholes who are trying to further their anti-whatever agenda. The sad part is that Donnelly Riot down libraries bought that bullshit. Because there's 15 really angry people pretending to be outraged on Twitter. They cancelled an event they had planned. That's just pathetic.
What do you feel now about, do you see yourself, like you said to me before we started, that you rarely go to bed before 2 a.m.
I've always been a night owl, and even though I'm 50 years old and I don't do the clubbing and all that anymore, I never want to leave the house. I still, I'll be reading The Guardian until 2 a.m. I am that cool,
right? And that's the way. And do you think you've settled? Do you see yourself settling down? Do you see yourself becoming the respectable person that people
want me to be?
Want you to be?
Well, part of me is that respectable person. Unfortunately, I always have been. I'm a middle class boy from a vet's family, and I fight against it because I don't want to be that either. But but I have a fella, and he's a morning person.
Okay,
it drives me fucking mad. So the banalities of life.
But tell me about the trip you took to Vienna with them.
The show, so the biggest row we'd ever had in our lives was just before a weekend to Vienna we were meant to be doing, and it was around Christmas markets, and that had all come about because I was doing some work there with the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs on Monday, and I said, hey, I have to work in Vienna on a Monday, why don't we go and make a weekend and go early? And at that time, my fella was, struggling, poor, student, and he would never do anything if I was paying for it. He didn't want to ever be that person. So I lied to him too, by the way, and said it was all being paid for. And it totally wasn't. I was paying for it. But that, oh God, later I wanted to scream that at him a few times and I could never. Anyway, so that was all planned. And then we had this huge row, and he refused to go. And we broke up. Like we had a breakup. And I honestly thought at the time, we're broken up for good because I will never be able to forgive this prick for that. And but then I was staring down the barrel of a long weekend alone in Vienna, nothing to fucking do but Christmas markets, and I'm not a Christmas markets guy. Okay. I was doing it for him. And he's Brazilian. Oh, that's just the way of the world at the moment. So of course he's Brazilian. But I had 2 tickets. I knew I could change the ticket and bring any mate of mine who could come or something, but it was very last minute. It involved not getting back till Tuesday. You'd have to take a day off work or whatever. So my mates were like, no, sorry. And then there was like this official work stuff and a dinner the night before that they were expecting to meet me and my lovely boyfriend, Anderson. And that dinner was 2 ambassadors and their wives. And there was an event where it was going to be like 200 people watching the Queen of Ireland. And me and my boyfriend Anderson were going to be there. And I was too embarrassed. How do you can't turn around and say, I've had a huge row with my boyfriend and I'm coming alone and I'm crying in this hotel room and, among Christmas markets for the weekend. So I thought, fuck it, I'll find another Brazilian. So I literally went on Grindr, went through all my old, messages from the last time I had broken up with my boyfriend, and found this guy who I remember we had a really fun conversation, but we'd never met or anything. And I basically said, hey, this might seem weird, but you're Brazilian. And I said, I have this weekend. I'm going the day after tomorrow. I'm not back till Tuesday morning. It's all paid for. And this person who we'd had a fun talk with before turned out to be a very fun person, and he works. He works as a quantity surveyor, right? And he said, "Well, I would have to ask my boss if I get him enough." And he comes back and says, "Okay." And I thought, well, that's fun of him to agree to this because this is the nuttiest idea ever. The first time we ever met face to face, when I picked him up at 5 a.m. in a taxi on the way to the airport. On the airplane over, we spent the time discussing each other's lives, and because I was like, what if somebody, he's at the toilet and the ambassador's wife says, does he eat meat? So you're like, I don't know.
It's like that movie Green Card. It was like
yes. So we learned the basics. We invent a little meeting story, and this is all because I'm too embarrassed to say. And we had to pay €40 to change the name on the ticket or whatever. And we discussed whether or not he would have to pretend his name wasn't Anderson. And I came up with this great plan. And where I said, well, as soon as we meet them and they call you Anderson, I'll say, oh, sorry, that's just his whole name is passport, because like all Brazilians, he has a double barrel. Anderson Rodrigo. So, but actually everybody calls him Rodrigo. And if that totally worked. And so I got this stranger. But if I had auditioned for the role, I couldn't have done any better. Like, he was super fun. We laughed all the weekend about it. We taking these ridiculous, romantic photographs at the freaking fucking Christmas markets. And I had a WhatsApp group of 17 mates who were following every bit blow by blow. And God, the ambassador may end up seeing this, or his lovely wife, or because I feel a little bit bad about it. But because then we turn up,
they don't know. They still
they
think
they
think they met Anderson.
No, this is the whole thing. So then we turn. So the work is on Monday. But they have invited us, and I had already agreed to this lovely, dinner in a restaurant with the 2 ambassadors and their wives on the Sunday night. So it comes to Sunday night, and me and my fake boyfriend turn up at the ambassador's residence. I do the line about the passport, and he's Rodrigo. That's all fine. He gets on really well with the ambassador because the ambassador had originally been in studied engineering, and Rodrigo is an engineer, and they were absolutely lovely. The ambassador at one point said to him, I work for the taxpayers in Ireland, and you pay taxes in Ireland, so I work for you. That blew his mind because, Brazilian ambassador, it's the whole of the world. They would never say that. And then we went to the dinner, and at one point, I'm talking to the ambassador across the table here, and my boyfriend, Rodrigo, who I just met, is talking to the ambassador's wife, and I hear my ambassador's wife say to him something about the Queen of Ireland movie, and he says, I've never seen it. And I thought, oh, fuck. And then he just says, because, my relationship was with the private Rory, and I just kind of feel like, and he gives this whole, spiel, and I was like, you should be my boyfriend, is what I'm thinking. Anyway, it was just hilarious and nutty and bizarre, and the second time in my life that I faked a trip, because me and Catherine Lynch once pretended to be brother and sister on an American TV show, but that's another story. And we just had, it was a hilarious weekend, and when we got back, of course, I ended up getting back.
Of course.
With Anderson. And actually, Rodrigo, my fake boyfriend, one of the very first things he said to me, because on the plane I was giving more details of how this crazy situation was. He said, that is not over. And he was right. It turned out we got back together again. But I only ever told this story once, and was in a theatre the day before me and Anderson really did get back together officially. And I told the story, and it ended with 200 people standing up in the Project Art Centre screaming, Rodrigo, 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 which I felt I couldn't tell Anderson that part. And then somebody else did a few weeks later, and he comes home and he goes, did you tell? But now they're friends.
Okay.
Yeah, it's turned out really wonderfully well, except for the lying to the ambassador. And if he or any of his adult children end up seeing this, or his lovely wife, it wasn't out of badness. It was out of embarrassment. Because I didn't want to turn up
I think
your
they'll
residence
understand.
saying I had a huge row and I'm on my own.
I think it's okay. I think they'll understand.
I do too. And although Rodrigo and the ambassador got on so well with their engineering in common, I think you'll also love Anderson.
Perfect ending. Rory, I think we got to hear a bit of the private Rory today as well, and it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that was Rory O'Neill, and if you are the Irish ambassador in Vienna, on Rory's behalf, thanks very much for the hospitality you did extend to him and Anderson / Rodrigo. Before we go, don't forget that if you do like the show, please review it on whatever platform you're getting it, and don't forget to subscribe across all the usual channels. Thanks. See you next time.